Hello everyone, you've probably guessed from the title that today's video is going to be a how to draw an eye tutorial. Obviously, as you can see here, my eye style is fairly simple and stylized, so if you're looking for how to draw realistic eyes or those really detailed anime style eyes, this video is not for you, I'm afraid. But if you're looking just for an easy basic eye tutorial to fit with a cartoony art style, then this might be of some use to you. I hope. Eyes are something I've struggled with, and to be honest, still do sometimes. I think as they're often the focal point of a drawing and play such a role in expression, as they do in real life, if the eyes don't quite look right, it can be more noticeable than other aspects of anatomy, and it can have quite a big impact on the overall look of an art style. So it's certainly worth spending a bit of time practicing eyes, in my opinion. Both realism studies using references and just figuring out a stylized way of drawing them that works well with your own art style. It certainly took me quite a long time to figure out a way of drawing eyes that I think fits with my style, which is why it's taken me so long to make this video. I was actually asked, it must be over a year ago now, to do an eye tutorial. Twice I actually recorded a video, but both times I never posted them, and actually I think I just deleted them because at that time I wasn't happy with how my eyes looked, and so I didn't really feel in a position to give any advice on how to draw eyes. So I know it's generic advice, but I'm going to give it anyway. If you are struggling with how to draw eyes, honestly the best advice is just keep playing around with it. Obviously do realism studies, as I said, that can help because it's easier to stylize things when you know how they're supposed to look in real life. But also just do things like playing around with adding and removing detail. Like I used to do a more detailed kind of eye than I do now, but they didn't really fit with the rest of my style, so I tried removing some elements and I think that looks better. So that's something you could try, or try using a different shape. You don't necessarily have to use this shape that I'm using here, or the typical kind of oval or round shapes that, traditionally used for eyes. There are quite a few artists that I know who use more like square or rectangular shapes, so quite angular looking eyes, which can work really well with some art styles. So just play around with it. Think outside the box a little bit. You don't have to do a standard looking eye. If that doesn't work for you, try something different. So on to the actual tutorial part of this video, and how to draw an eye in my style. Obviously the first part is drawing out the eye shape, which you can see here. This is pretty much the standard shape I personally use for drawing eyes. It's kind of like an egg shape, I guess, but one side is flat. Obviously the shape does vary depending on the expression and the character that I'm drawing, but just for the sake of this tutorial, this is the kind of shape I use. I might widen it for different expressions or narrow it, but for a neutral kind of expression, this is how it would look when I draw an eye. As you can see, when I do the line art, I fill in the pupil completely with the line art colour. And I often also line around the iris and around the little white highlight that's at the top of the eye, just because I prefer how it looks with my current style. So when I'm colouring, I always colour the iris on a separate layer. from, you know, like the highlights and things, because sorry for the pauses, I'm trying to draw and speak at the same time, it's quite hard. I can't multitask. Yeah, because with the iris, once I've coloured the base colour, I set the layer to alpha lock and then take a slightly darker colour, and with a soft airbrush just airbrush in the slightly darker colour at the top of the eye, and then take a slightly lighter colour and even lighter and airbrush in at the bottom of the eye there. And that's basically all I do for colouring at this stage, other than colouring the line art, which is just a clipping mask on top of the line art and then colour pick from the actual colour layer. And then I set that to about 60% opacity. And then with the soft airbrush again, I just erase at the top of the pupil, just to make it kind of blend in with the sort of outline of the eye, like that. And that's my colouring done. With shading, the first couple of steps are the same process I would use for just shading any part of a character. So you might already know them if you've seen my like proper shading tutorial video. I would merge the colour and line art layers. Usually I'd group them and duplicate the layer and then merge that so that I do have the original layers if I need them. Flatten all those and then create a clipping mask layer on top of the merged layer. Just shade in the top of the eye. Obviously set this clipping mask layer to multiply. Usually sort of shade a little bit around the pupil like that. Sometimes down here. There, then I would set that clipping mask layer to alpha lock and pick another colour, usually pink. Doesn't really matter, but they're just the colours I use, pink and purple for shading usually. And then with the soft airbrush again, just lightly airbrush the second colour on the edge of the shading layer. Then when I'm happy with that, I reduce the opacity of the multiply layer. Generally I have my shading layers at about 40 to 60% opacity. Obviously it depends on the sort of mood I'm going for or the background and stuff. Then it's another layer on top of that, again clipped to this merged layer. Go back to the purple colour. And I outline around the shading. And I would then set that layer to multiply as well. And use your brush, airbrush the pink again onto this a little bit, using the alpha lock. And reduce the opacity. After the basic shading, I make yet another layer. There's a lot of making clipping mask layers. Clip it. And I choose generally quite a pale blue, and using just a normal brush throughout this and just in general for all my art, I'm just using the soft airbrush and the technical pen. So with the technical pen, colour in inside the shading with this blue colour at at the top of the eye. Then I reduce the opacity of that, generally about 40% again. And take the soft airbrush and erase like the bottom of this blue. Next, using just a normal layer mode clipped to the base layer, I take a fairly pale colour, so in this case a slightly paler purple, and just do little like round blobs in the iris. As I get higher up, I'd colour pick from the iris itself and use those colours, so I wouldn't just have one colour going up. Gradually make the little blobs darker. Like so, and I might add like a little line going through them. I would also, on this same layer, do little highlights or like around the pupil. And just sort of around the edges of the eye. I don't really have like specific placements for this sort of thing that I use every time. It's just I kind of do what feels right for that particular eye. I generally do try and colour pick from colours I've already got on the eye itself rather than adding new colours. At this point I'd also go over the white highlight because obviously I've shaded over that, so I want to make it brighter again. So next, on another normal clipping layer, I take a very pale colour, usually sort of off-white, and colour the bottom half of the eye. And then reduce the opacity, usually to really quite low, to about 15. I wouldn't go higher than 20, usually. Next, on another layer, yet again another layer, again clipped to the base layer and just a normal layer mode. Still using the sort of white colour at the very top of the eye. I'll colour it in sort of roughly about the width of the highlight here. And then I'll do little lines through it. Like that. And reduce the opacity again by quite a lot. And take the soft airbrush and erase just the very top of each little like square. Not too much, just so it blends in a little bit. New layer again. Clipped still. And normal layer mode still. And then you can see here with this eye, I've done like more highlights and things around, which is what I'm going to do on this layer. Colour of the highlights generally depending on what I'm using for the rest of the art piece, you know, what colour the light is and stuff. again, I don't necessarily have a set placement for these highlights, it's just more like where they look good for that particular piece. But it's generally sort of around the outside. I mean, obviously it depends where the lighting is supposed to be coming from, but be sort of around the outside of the eye. Generally do some little dots. Like, I'm not so much going obviously for realistic lighting, I'm kind of just adding little things to make it look, the eye look a bit more interesting, so it's not like totally basic, it has a little bit of visual interest. That's almost it. The final thing I do is on a layer that's not clipped to the eye, I take colour from the iris and using the soft airbrush again on a quite large size, I airbrush over the eye, like over the whole eye, and then I play around with the layer modes a bit. Usually I use overlay or colour burn, but sometimes use other things. In this case I use vivid light, and then again just play with the opacity until it looks how you want it to. Now obviously, because I haven't clipped this to the eye, it's going to be visible on any colour around it. Obviously I've got a white background here, but you see if I've added colour, you can see it. So I would then set the eraser to airbrush and just erase a little bit around this layer, just so it blends in with the colour a bit. I do that just because it makes the eye look a bit shinier and brighter. And yeah, and that's it. That's how I do eyes. So, you know, it's pretty simple. A lot of my tutorials are aimed mainly at beginners. So, yeah, that's what this tutorial was for. If you want to do a basic eye, that's how I go about it. I hope some of you may have found this video useful. And that's it. I hope you have a great day and good luck with all your artwork. Thank you for watching. Bye!